Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's Record Review, the only first listen new music review show hosted by a French professor on a very hot afternoon. And I just turned off my air conditioning so it sounds better for you. I'm going to be reviewing the album RTJ 4 by Run the Jewels. And first of all, I need to give a brief... My reviews are very long, and this is going to be a long one. I have a lot to say. It's the most notes I've ever written, 6 pages. A lot of that's quotes. But if you enjoy hip-hop music, you must listen to this album. If you enjoy politically relevant music, you must listen to this album. If neither of those things appeal to you, that's fine. But this is as serious, as high of a recommendation as you can give to something in terms of both its example of excellent hip-hop, but also in terms of its political and social relevance at this exact moment. I'm going to move the camera one more time. I'm getting a weird sort of glossy Sybil Shepherd thing going over there. So this is the thing. This is a very intellectually stimulating album. I'm going to go over all the different times that the two rappers, Killer Mike and LP, end up saying something that caught me off guard with how, frankly, extremely educated it was. But really, the way they frame the entire album is much more lowbrow than it is highbrow, and I think it's to their credit. The album begins with a song called Yankee and the Brave. And it begins with like a voiceover saying, "This week on Yankee and the Brave." And the whole album ends, the very last thing you hear is a fake opening credits scene to a fictional TV show called Yankee and the Brave. Now this idea makes sense, okay? Yankee referring to the New York Yankees, referring to LP, one of the members of the group, and the Brave referring to Killer Mike, who's from Atlanta, like the Atlanta Braves. But what's interesting here is that rap artists are always given... Rap artists have a freedom that, like, most other musicians don't give themselves anymore. I mean, David Bowie could reinvent himself and create different characters, and everyone said, okay, that's fine. But really, rock and roll, they aren't allowed to do that anymore. Rap artists can recreate themselves and pitch themselves in dramatic roles as they wish. Usually that falls into one or two categories. The hero, I'm the good guy who does the good things, and I'm not like the bad guys who do the bad things. Or, I'm the bad guy, say goodbye to the bad guy, I do all the bad things, I sell the drugs, I kill the people. With this fake intro, they're making it very clear that they are casting themselves as 1970s style anti-heroes. There was a whole series of TV shows in the 70s, like where you had the heroes were at the edges of the law. They were outlaws. They truly were outlaws. They constantly were at odds with the police, but they were the ones who made sure that justice was done. The police were iniquitous, and they were just. And they had to both act against the bad parts of society while also evading the law. And throughout the 70s and 80s, you had Kung Fu, Billy Jack, the Incredible Hulk, the Dukes of Hazzard. And really the way that they're putting this with this like framing device is that that's who they are. They're these unlikely friends. It's unlikely because one of them's white and one of them's black. Very rare in American hip-hop. Very common in French hip-hop. That's a whole nother story. But they're casting themselves as though they are in a buddy cop, outlaw, vigilante justice TV show from the 70s. And they do it very well. And I think that's the way to think of them. That the police are bad, the criminals are bad, and only they have the right path. And they do it driving around in their black Buick Grand National. They even picked a car to be their official car, and it's a cool one. I would say that this figure is largely missing in modern media and pop culture. Maybe that's why Fast and the Furious is so popular, because they do that pretty well. But other than that, I can't think of other major franchises that do that, where they have an anti-hero, they have a criminal as the hero who's fighting both the cops and the criminals. So that's the way that I like to frame this record. It's a light way of framing what is a very deep, very upsetting album. It's upsetting sonically. I mean, the way that it's produced, the thing it reminds me most of is actually Public Enemy. And it's not that they're like trying to sound like Public Enemy. The production doesn't sound that much like it. But there's an aggression, an unpleasantness, a noisiness, an attacking quality to this music that goes along with the very political lyrics, the very personal lyrics that make it that way. the Bomb Squad, the people who produced Public Enemy, said their goal was to destroy music. I don't think that's the goal here on this album. But I do think that they are trying to keep us unsettled. Lyrically, it's quite interesting because I would say it's marked by 3 principal themes. Each one of them is more interesting than most hip-hop themes. None of it's about glorifying money or drugs or sex. They're political, they're prideful, and they're personal. Politically, I'll go over it. Tons of very timely, very political comments. Prideful, whenever they just decide to be dumb and just cut loose. Because, rappers can't always be on message. They have so many words to say that their default is not look at how rich we are. It's look at how good we are. It's like they're driving in their car, Yankee and the Brave with the 70s, wah-wah going as they go off to fight the criminal and the cops and all that. And like they're just bragging about how badass they are. And I really find that, comforting. There's something really sweet about this album, about the interaction between them. Like they're very clearly friends, and they will often rap about how the other person is awesome. That's just pretty rare. And then there's the personal. There's truly a personal side to this album. I enjoyed their other albums, and I didn't get the personal side as much. It is very clear that Killer Mike's mother died in the last 2 years. Mine died 3 years ago. It's not something you don't think about. And he's very reflective. He's very much talking about the way that he has let her down, the way that he has lived up to what she wanted, but also the ways that she let him down. LP is a little bit less self-reflective, but he's way more existential. A lot of comments, a lot of videos that a lot of lines that he has here, he's talking about sort of the existential state that he is in. Another thing about LP, my main difficulty with this album is that he doesn't produce the whole thing. Now, he never produced all of their stuff, but he was usually the main producer. This one, there's like a list of these other people, and it's good, but it makes it feel a little bit distanced from me. I like it more when he's doing more, but that's fine. It is interesting because on the production side, it's a lot more electronic dance sounding. It's a lot more electro, which I don't know if he would have brought to the project, so that's quite interesting. So let me go track by track in my pink Cadillac here as I talk about, pink Citroen, as I talk about what makes this album so good. Again, it is just astounding. Like, you really need to listen to it. I'm thankful that they came out with this 4 days ago. It gave me extra time to review it and be really ready to talk about it because it is dense. This is not one of these albums you just kind of listen to and go, ah. I mean, the production is dense. The lyrics are dense. So it starts off with the track Yankee and the Brave. And right off the bat, the lyrical style is ack, 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 ack. Okay, that sounded like two things. That sounded like the Martians in Mars Attacks, ack, 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 ack. And it also sounded a little bit like Billy Joel saying Cadillac, ack, 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 ack. But what I mean is there's a lot of rhymes, like we're back at it, ack, abbot, ack, craftmatic. But the way they do it is smart because it's just these ack, ack, ack sounds with high snare, tap, 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 tap sounds before this beautiful drum sample comes in. I believe it's Cold Grits, the version of It's Your Thing that Kanye sampled on Power. And again, this is where it really feels like the Public Enemy model because it's just attacking you. It's musically so aggressive. But then when LP's verse comes in, this is why I say you have to keep listening to this record because like there's these weird like haunting notes over his verse that only appear there and not somewhere else. It's very, very well done, and it's a great mixture of kind of electronic dance aesthetic and hip-hop aesthetic. In here, there's a whole verse about being cornered by the police. I think it's pretty reasonable to say that he's taking on the personality of that guy who got caught in a shootout with the police a couple years ago. I forget his name. You can put it in the comments here. But even if he's not, it's very salient. The theme of F the police is very strong here. And don't get it twisted. They did not start talking about this because of George Floyd. They started talking about this from a long time ago. Killer Mike has been talking about that for a long time. I'll get more into the political stuff soon. Then we get to the song Ooh La La. And this has a funny Gangstar sample. And I like this because I think Gangstar and Run the Jewels are pretty similar, just in terms of like that it's a duo and they're politically smart. They're sort of smarter than the rest of hip-hop and what they're doing. It's cool because right off the bat with this quote, LP says, I'm afraid of nothing but nothingness. Ain't it something? And that's the unexpected intellectual reference number one. That's clearly a reference to Sartre being in nothingness, and that's what he's afraid of. Or even potentially Blaise Pascal, but that was a couple centuries before that. And it's nice because on this one, Killer Mike comes in and he's not doing an attacking flow. He's doing, like, he quotes Old Dirty Bastard and kind of like shimmy, shimmy, ya. And he has this sort of like different style flow than he had on the first track. And this is interesting too because culturally he talks about going from feeling more like Batman to feeling more like Joker. Jesus, this video is going to be long. I could spend like 10 minutes now describing what that difference might mean. I'm not going to. But I might. I might in the future. Hopefully more rappers will talk about this because Joker, the movie being such a social realist masterpiece, is quite interesting. I should have mentioned that in my social realism thing. Anyways, moving on to the track Out of Sight. This is great because it's a great mixture of all three of these themes, the political, personal, and just the proud, like how proud they are of how cool they are. This is the first track with LP's production credit. He didn't do the first two. Well, I should also mention on Ooh La La, it's not good French. They don't say Ooh La La, they say Oh La. Oh La La, La La La. Like, they don't go like Ooh La La. Oh La is more like Oh, whoa, Oh La. That's the way the French actually use Oh La. Yeah. But in this track, Out of Sight, is really nice because they also have back and forth between them. So, in general, I bet if you counted the number of words said by each rapper, it'd be 50-50. I don't know if that's true. I just feel that it is. But it's nice because sometimes I'll go verse to verse, and then sometimes I'll just do 2 lines and 2 lines, and it gives you that awesome feeling. That you're watching Yankee and the Brave at 8 o'clock on CBS, followed by Banachek and Columbo. Right here, too, they also compare themselves to Ghostface Killah and Raekwon the Chef from Wu-Tang Clan, which I think is a pretty nice reference and a good way of thinking about them. Again, they seem to be very consciously placing themselves as a great duo, right? We already have Gang Starr, and now Ghost and Ray. Like, they're really placing themselves in the pantheon of great hip-hop duos, where they deserve to be. This is the introduction of the theme of Killer Mike's mom being dead. He mentions that here. And the first very clear another very clear anti-police statement, Hawk and Lugie's on the swine. And then here, I don't know if this is true. I believe Killer Mike makes a reference to Canadian media theorist and philosopher Marshall McLuhan. He says, TV's got no temperature, and even if we did, B-word, we're as cool as penguin female genitalia. So, like, Marshall McLuhan talked about, like, different medias having different temperatures, being cold and hot. And I think that's what this is a reference to, but I don't know. I'm going to be seeing my dad in an hour. He studied a lot of Marshall McLuhan. I'll ask him what he thinks. Although he always... No, I don't think I'm going to do that. Well, maybe I will. I'll report back to you in the comments how it went. The LP verse is really great because it's my favorite on here in terms of the pride, just how awesome Killer Mike is. Like, he's talking about how if you attack my brother, I'll attack you, and how good they are. There's a guest appearance by 2 Chainz, who I can't figure out how good 2 Chainz is, but on this, he's excellent. Next track is Holy Kalama F Word. The most Bomb Squad style production. This has a reggae sample from Cuddy Ranks. So that's the second time in 2 weeks I've mentioned Cuddy Ranks, who is also on the 1975. This is weird. Like, why is this one dancehall reggae star getting his moment in the sun in pop culture and hip-hop culture? I don't know, but it's a great track. And here we have some of my favorite verses. I'm going to read some of them. I'm not going to read all of them. But LP talks about being the magic beam imbibers, the green giants of rhyme contrivers. Sorry. Oh, yeah, that's Toby. I'm going to have to pause it. Okay, Toby probably stopped barking. Who knows? And then he refers to himself as the supreme violence of the time describers. So I love this. It's intentionally awkward. This rhyme is intentionally awkward. And he's saying that they are describing the supreme violence of their time. Not perpetrating it, but describing it. It's interesting, too. The beats sound almost trap-like, but very consciously, this album is not trap at all. It's very well produced. And then I think it's intentional that with this slight trap beat underneath, Killer Mike talks about selling drugs in the past. He says, 1 minute, let me be candid, used to stand by the garbage hand to hand, and that dumb trap S-word, no proper planning, sing ignorant S-word like geekers dancing, and rappers rap about it like it's so romantic. But I still can't seem to escape the panic, PTSD, streets did the damage. This is the first time I've ever heard a rap artist discuss living on the streets and participating in the drug trade as giving you legitimate trauma. Why? I think it's a realistic thing. I think it's a realistic thing that this would happen. So, very much, this is a great verse, an example of how Killer Mike is just the best political rapper. I'm done. He's the best political rapper. I was going to say since Chuck D, but he's better than Chuck D. Screw it. I just said it. I mean, I don't think he would want me to say that. He probably thinks Chuck D is better than him. But he's the best political rapper because he manages to do it in a way that's never whack. It's like never not cool. It's never not interesting. It's always going in different directions. And it's always anchored in the personal. He's always able to bring it back to himself. Seriously. Yeah, I think so. I think he is the best political rapper. What do you think? I would like to see that in the comments. Do you think someone's better? Goonies versus E.T., some of the best production on the album, some cool like ominous keyboards going underneath, and then the drums just come in perfectly. This album does a great job with keyboards and sequencers and drum machines coming in. And here it's great because LP's whole verse is about making it in the bad world. He says, living in the valley of flames like I win, skyline ablaze in a Bob Ross pick. And it's just beautiful. It's just this beautiful concept of that they finally succeeded in the world, but the world itself is garbage. And that's a pretty interesting, very modern theme. Here also we have Killer Mike sort of taking aim at people like myself who have ever posted political things on social media. He says that woke folk be playing, used to be a time I'd see it and not say it. So this idea that the woke are not serious and that the revolution will not be televised or digitized and that we're all hypnotized. I think it's quite interesting. And then we get into the political masterpiece of the album. If you have listened to nothing else, listen to me now. I sound like Hans and Franz from Saturday Night Live, but there you go. Walking in the Snow. First of all, awesome head-nodding beat. They had these accent notes on the 2 and the 4, like, hey, 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 hey. This just got you kind of nodding your head the whole time. There's these great guitar sounds. LP comes out, he's at his existential best. He just is talking about his existence, and then he goes further and describes the way that fascism actually works. Funny fact about a cage, they never built it for just one group. So when that cage is done with them and you're still poor, it come for you. That is the way that fascism functions. It's never about attacking one group. It's always about attacking, eliminating one group, and then moving down the triangle to finding the next group to take over. The existentialist comes out when he talks about pseudo-Christians, y'all indifferent, kids in prison ain't sin. Ain't a scrap of what Jesus taught connected, you'd feel different. What a disingenuous way to piss away existence. I often, when talking and thinking about Run the Jewels, just think of it like this. Killer Mike is the greatest, one of the greatest lyricists of our generation. He's up here, he's the greatest, and also LP is good. But he produces, and if he isn't there to counterbalance Killer Mike wouldn't be as good. You know, in basketball terms, so very clearly the Scottie Pippen of the group. But when he has a lyric like this, what a disingenuous way to piss away existence. I'm sorry, LP, I underestimated you. That's a great, great verse. And then we have Killer Mike's verse. I've thought about this. Should I actually read the whole damn thing? I'm going to do it. You know why? I don't get to the point. The point is this. The point is me talking to you, thinking about this album, using my professorial brain to come up with different ways of thinking about it. And this verse, I think, is the perfect explanation of our historical moment. I am 100% certain it was written well before the riots, well before George Floyd. But the sadness and the comprehensive look in a way, it's like The Message, right? A child is born with no state of mind, blind to the ways of mankind, and then it ends with him swinging in a cell, right? But it's so of the moment. It's so like, not only are we helpless, but we're helpless, and this is why. So I'm going to read his whole verse. I don't have his flow. I do want to say something else about Killer Mike. I'm heaping a lot of praise on him. He is underrated for his flow. He's got really good flow. I mean, I just reviewed Freddie Gibbs, and he's very well known for having a great flow and being able to mix it up. But you really learn what a great flow Killer Mike has when you print out the lyrics to the song Cold Snow, Walking in the Snow, and you read it out loud to your family, and you realize how bad you sound versus how good he sounds. So I'm just going to read it. When I read it to my family, I cried because it's so sad and so true. I'm probably not going to cry now, but if I do, just know I'm trying not to. The way I see it, you're probably freest from ages 1 to 4. Around the age of 5, you'll be shipped away for your body to be stored. They promise education, but really they give you tests and scores, and they're predicting prison population by who's scoring the lowest. And usually the lowest scores the poorest, and they look like me, and every day and every evening they feed you fear for free. And you so numb you watch the cops choke out a man like me, till my voice goes from a shriek to whisper, I can't breathe. And you sit there in the house couch and watch it on TV. The most you give's a Twitter rant and call it a tragedy. But truly the travesty, you've been robbed of your empathy, replaced it with apathy. I wish I could magically fast forward the future so that you can face it and see how effed up it'll be. I promise I'm honest, they're coming for you the day after they're coming for me. So he's reiterating exactly what LP just said previously, that they're coming for you. And that's what it is. And the way that he describes the I can't breathe moment, how he's able to take you from birth till this point of him being killed, and then taking it further to saying it's you who will be killed. He goes on then again with unexpected intellectual references 3 and 4. I'm reading Chomsky, I read Bukowski. So Chomsky, first of all, he was a great linguist. People often overlook that. Great linguist. The work that he did on like linguistics is more revolutionary than his political work, but he's also a great leftist thinker. And it's amazing to have him actually said in a rap in a way that's convincing and doesn't feel forced. And then says, I read Bukowski. I actually didn't like Bukowski that much. He's a novelist, writes a lot about being drunk, kind of anti-societal. I'm laying low for a week. I said something on behalf of my people and it popped up on WikiLeaks. Thank God that I'm covered. The devil is smothered. And you know that evil don't sleep. Dick Gregory told me a couple secrets before he lay down in his grave. All of us serve the same masters. All of us nothing but slaves. Never forget, in the story of Jesus, the hero was killed by the state. I don't talk politics on this channel. I generally don't. But I will tell you something that is funny and true. I did not decide to support Bernie Sanders until Killer Mike interviewed him on YouTube. That was the interview that I saw where, Jay-Z supports Obama. Okay, that sort of means something, but Jay-Z's political thoughts are not very well developed. It's sort of more affect than I think it is a sincere statement, although he's done a lot of good work. But having this whole discussion between them helped me to actually get over the fact that I sort of saw Bernie as a fad, the Bernie bros and the whole thing. That's why I ended up supporting Bernie Sanders and why I ended up actually sending him money as well. The point is not hooray for Bernie and he's gone, whatever. The point is that music and art, and this goes back to Sartre for that matter, it doesn't have to be engaged, right? You don't have to have great music to be engaged. The Freddie Gibbs album is great. It's not particularly politically engaged. At times it is. Actually, at times it really is, especially about police suppression. But on the whole, that's not what it's about. All great art is not engaged. By that I mean politically engaged. Going back to the French term engagé. But when it is good, it can legitimately move people to action. In my last 10 years of listening to Killer Mike and appreciating what he's been able to produce, literally led me to go, actually, screw it. I'm going for this guy. Fun fact, the word intellectual, do you know where it comes from? A lot of people don't know this. At the turn of the century, like a little bit before the turn of the century, there was this famous case in France where a guy named Dreyfus, he was a Jewish officer in the French army, and he was framed. He was the only Jewish officer in the French army, and he was framed for being a spy for the Germans. Back in those days, everyone thought that the Jews and the Germans were best friends working together against France. Once they're done with me, they'll come after you. Killer Mike's not wrong. So he was accused. He was falsely accused. He was set up. He was actually the real person who did it, oddly enough, is the great-great-great-great-grandson of Haydn's benefactor. Whole other story. So in this time, there was a great division between the right and the left. And people who supported Dreyfus, the Jewish officer, who was completely innocent, and those who felt that Dreyfus was guilty, and this was proof of the degeneration of the French people and the Jewish-German conspiracy to destroy France. Left and right. The insult that was given to writers and artists who believe that through their thinking and through their art, they can affect change. The insult that was laid at Émile Zola and others who were trying to use their intellectual strength and cultural power. The insult was intellectual. That was a French word first. Late 19th century, early 20th century. This is a true intellectual album. Not only with intellectual references like Bukowski and Chomsky and Sartre and all that junk, but truly in the sense that is engaged artists who could potentially actually affect change, even if it's just me donating money to a failed campaign. Jeez. Is this going to get me hate complaints? I don't know. That's fine. It's fine. The next track is Just with a money sign, unsettling voices in the back all the way throughout. And this is all about the inability to stop being a slave. About the systems that confine us all, that even if you get rich and even if you get educated and even if you get prestige, you're always going to end up being a slave. With this repeated chorus, look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Freddie Gibbs was the first person I ever heard referring to dollars as being slave masters. Here's the second. Weird. Twice in 1 week. This has the best intellectual reference. LP says, I've got a Vonnegut punch for your Atlas shrugs. LP, I am so sorry. One more time. Dude, your lyrics are so good. Like, Kurt Vonnegut is this great sort of misanthropic, but dark, socially minded, politically forward-thinking author. And then Atlas Shrugged is a book by Ayn Rand that's all about the cult of the individual and the superiority. And most of the jerks, you know, that believe that there's no such thing as a society and we have to be individual and lift ourselves up are very into Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged. So this one line, got a Kurt Vonnegut punch for your Atlas Shrugs. Yes, it's too clever. Yes, it's too precious. But goddamn it, I never thought I'd hear it. I never thought I'd hear Chomsky, and I sure as hell never thought I'd hear Kurt Vonnegut referenced in a rap album. Do you know what else I never expected? The ability to listen to Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine and not want to poke my goddamn eyes out. I hate that guy. I hate Rage Against the Machine so much that when they toured with Wu-Tang Clan, when Wu-Tang Clan was not their peak, but pretty close with the Wu-Tang Forever tour, I wouldn't see Wu-Tang Clan. It wasn't worth it to me. I didn't even want to see Rage Against the Machine for 1 second, or their fans. That's how much I dislike Zach De La Rocha. But maybe I was just being a contrarian jerk. He's good on this song. His voice helps. And remember, like 3 minutes ago, I was talking about how important it is to have intellectuals, you know, engaged artists. Well, I guess I'm a hypocrite. Never Look Back is probably my favorite track on the album. I mean, I would say I keep forgetting that the Cold Snow one, Walking in the Snow, is maybe the most important in terms of the verse and the political aspect, but Never Look Back, I would say, is the best track on the album. It's a very kind of, again, electronic dance music sounding instrumental, kind of like a broken arpeggiator, sounds a little bit like Tron, but it's all about like personal reflection and bad advice that you've gotten in your youth. Never look back. His great rich synthesizer goes with 808 drumming from time to time. And Killer Mike just puts on I think his best flows. This was the song where the first time I listened to it, I just wrote, Killer Mike, one of the best flows in the game. As I like to say almost every video, I don't have a script, I have notes. And so you can see there, Killer Mike, one of the best flows in the game. I want to make sure I got to that in this video. I've now said it 3 times. It's cool though because what he does is he points out his parents' contradictory information. Like, never give a woman anything is what his mom told him and what his dad told him. So like, did that apply to my mom too? Right? And then LP comes on and his verse is basically just as good, talking about his life and looking back at how he got to where he got. Again, it's just really nice because it's all about this idea of never looking back while it's actually looking back. And it really is a look at their own flaws as people. They're doing a lot of interesting things. Ground Below has kind of a heavy metal guitar, very, very angry rapping from Killer Mike. And at times they take out the guitar, which is nice. It gives you a breather. And in Killer Mike's verse, he goes on and sort of explains the difference between religiosity and morality. Hey, Killer Mike, could you expand on that? Could you do a whole song about that? Because like, people don't talk about that very much. They started talking about that in France, basically, in the 18th century. There's a really good short story all about that. But yeah, I really, really love this theme. And he's talking about how it is to be a good person and how different that is from being a very religious person. Beautiful. LP's on there. He has kind of a goofy line that's funny. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but you're all against me. I was pausing because I forgot what the name of the short story was. It's by Diderot, and it's called like Letter to Marquise de, and then there's just a blank. And it's this whole correspondence back and forth, this whole discussion between a man and a woman, and the woman's like, if you don't believe in God, then how come you're still a good person? That's a question that people still ask to this day. Killer Mike wants to know. Killer Mike wants to talk about it. Why? Because Killer Mike is the best intellectual rapper in the game. Pulling the Pin is cool here because there's a lot of sort of satanic themes. They did this a lot on the album 2 albums ago, where they sort of see their adversaries as being like the forces of Satan. Realistically, if we broke this down, it's all about class, I think. I think that the forces of Satan are free market capitalism and racism and oppression. Again, really nice kind of electro-sounding production with a kind of guitar in the back. There's just a beautiful LP line. Once again, this album might as well be called Skye Learns to Love LP. These old foxes got a lot of plots to outfox us, try to divvy up and dump in corresponding boxes. How obnoxious. I just love how we can tag things like that. They're both very comfortable saying something kind of silly and knowing that it's silly and letting it be that way. It's like they're, again, the badass cops who like make a bad pun and they know it's a bad pun, but it's kind of smart at the same time and they kind of keep going. A nice kind of sung chorus by Mavis Staples. There's a grenade in my heart and the pin is in their palm. That's a great way of describing the fragility that we have in systems of power where we are not in control. And again, Killer Mike ends up talking about his mom and about the sense of regret and this feeling of loss. It's really quite beautiful. The final track is called A Few Words for the Firing Squad. This is cool because, okay, it's my least favorite beat on the whole album. But it's the most interesting beat on the whole album because it's real bass and I think real drums and real strings and everything's kind of building up. There's a very nice usage of a saxophone, kind of like a wailing saxophone. So I applaud its ambition, although the execution I think is not great. No pun intended. Execution. A few words for the firing squad. Killer Mike's verse again is just this personal side. I'm not going to read this whole one, but it's all about how money didn't make him happy and how he learned about his mother's death, or he was talking to his mom right before she died and he was on a plane, and then talks about how he wants to kill his pain with drugs, but how his wife doesn't want him to become an addict. It's just this really inspirational track about like the way that he's able to see his own flaws and the way that he uses his relationships to other people to help him stay centered and stay tethered. It's the thing, like, you ever study addiction or psychology, right? Like happiness in life comes through your connections to other people. And very often rap music is about severing those ties and being, who do I trust? Me. That's who. Who I trust? Me, right? Just the individualism, the frankly Ayn Randian individualism of gangster rap and of rap is always like, nobody does this but me. I'm totally alone. Drake, I can't trust anybody. Everybody loves me. No one can trust me. No one, trust no one. I'm alone. Hip hop started as a socialist movement, I would argue, in the way that it was put forth. I said that a little bit more controversially than I meant it. So you can feel free to contradict me in the comments, but I think that's a more or less safe thing to say. And this move towards individualism, I mean, it's always competitive about being the best, but at the same time that it's about being the best, it was about bringing everybody up and proving to everybody that we are all somebody, right? And that's the way that I mean it as socialist. But the idea that Killer Mike is saying here is that he's going to pull through. He's not going to become an addict. He's not going to become just some flash-in-the-pan loser because of this connection that he has to his wife and to his family. That's what's going to keep him tethered. He's not spending the entire time, like so many rap verses, explaining how, well, gee, I'd love to love you, but I just don't love any hoes. So I'm sorry, but I just don't love you. He's saying that he loves you. And LP as well, somewhere else on the verse. No, on this song. He actually even talks about how it's the grace of someone's love that keeps him going. And how instead of being focused on being smart, like making Kurt Vonnegut rhymes, he should be focusing on his heart. Jesus Christ. Is that what this whole song's about? Is it about the importance of having human connections and not just relying on your own individuality? Run the jewels. I mean, hooray! This is great. I'm sorry, I just realized that right now. That's what this whole song's about. And Killer Mike says, this is for the do-gooders that the no-gooders use and abuse. Beautiful, beautiful line. Has a nice kind of ambitious instrumental outro, and then comes the Yankee and the Brave intro, creating an entire loop to the album that makes it excellent to just leave it on your streaming service and just let it start all over again. Yankee and the Brave. Back at it like a crack addict, Craftmatic. Amazing. So there you go. There's my review of this truly intellectual masterpiece. I need to tell you something about my style. I did not know I was going to give you that lecture about the history of the word intellectual. So if it was too wordy, I apologize. But I'm proud of myself for thinking of it because I think it really applies, and I'm probably going to put it in my thumbnail. So there you go. Well, we got away with only one interruption by Toby, so that's not too bad. And I don't know if this shirt is going to alias on YouTube and I have to redo the whole thing, but I'm about to sweat my forehead off. So until next time, there's the camera.